Hi everybody, John Morgan here, and I'm here with my good friend and great client, Sarah Piddington. Sarah is somebody I've worked with for a few years. She's Australian, she's been living in London for over a decade, and she is an independent health and safety consultant and a thought leader in the health and safety world, really, in the UK and soon to be globally. Sarah's gone on an amazing journey over the past 3 years. She's created all of this independent consultancy basically out of thin air. When I met her, she just left corporate. It had only been a few months, and it's been a pleasure to watch her go out and to create everything she envisioned and to now have new visions about creating even more. So I'm looking forward to you hearing Sarah's story. And hi, Sarah, how are you?
Hi, good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. So yeah, I think the first question is, because a lot of people that are watching this will be people who are in corporate jobs, maybe positions of leadership, but they have something else they want to be doing. Maybe they want to be more independent, do something on their own. And so I'm curious, what had you leave? I know that your company was closing down, and that was part of the impetus, but what had you go from employment to being an independent consultant a few years ago?
So as you said, the catalyst was knowing that the organisation I was working with was going to be shutting down within the next 12 months. And I was looking at other jobs that were out there, and I realised that they were going to be very same. And health and safety people have garnered themselves quite a bad reputation because they're not thought leaders. We tend to look at legislation, and I didn't want to be one of these people that just works for an organisation to talk about the law. So I thought about what impact I could go and make in the world, and I realised that I could make a bigger impact by encouraging people to do health and safety a better way, and I could do that by working with clients myself.
Cool. So when you first left, what were you looking for, and what were the challenges that you were facing, and what is it that you knew you wanted to do?
I was looking for places where I could influence the leaders of the organisation. So I didn't want to be down the food chain where you end up reporting through HR, and HR have their own agendas for health and safety and sickness absence management and things like that. So I wanted to be working with the top echelons of a company or an organisation so that I could actually help change their mindset, so that after I'm with them for a day or a week or 6 months, they can go and lead health and safety themselves. So I just wanted to make sure that I was being placed in organisations at the right level so I could make that impact and win hearts and minds and change behaviours.
So now I want to go deeper into this because I have to rewind my mind a little bit to remember, but it was in the beginning that we're having a lot of conversations about not only that you wanted to do that, but why, what was important to you about that? Like, what's driving you? Because when people hear the terms health and safety, you know what they probably think, right? They don't think what you think. So what was it? What was it for you? And what is it?
For me, it's about getting organisations to understand that if you look after people's well-being, so if you put their health first, good safety follows, because people who are well-rested and aren't particularly stressed and who have the right ability to be concentrating on their work have less accidents, which impacts less on the bottom line of an organisation. And let's face it, those running an organisation want to have a financially solvent and profitable organisation, and health and safety can be one of those things that costs organisations a lot of money. So I wanted to come into this and teach people to look at health and safety as through its ability of being a profit centre rather than a cost centre, as well as people just doing health and safety because morally it's the right thing to do. People just shouldn't go to work and come home with one arm less or a finger less, and for us to think that's an acceptable or a tolerable risk, because it's not.
And you've seen a lot of this, obviously, in your work. You've seen a lot of injuries. You've seen the stories. You've been there, and obviously, seeing that continues to keep you inspired and motivated to help make sure it doesn't happen. But like, what do you think started you down this path of just caring about health and safety in the first place?
I guess I've just always been like that. I've always been a very caring and empathetic person, and going into a field which is heavily male-dominated and seeing how people respond to me versus how they respond to 95% of other health and safety people, that was a very that was very powerful for me. And the fact that I am empathetic and I will sit down with someone and say, okay, this accident's happened. I mean, I've seen some pretty serious construction accidents after working in construction for 7 years. And instead of being like another health and safety person and saying, here's an accident form, we're going to discuss how this happened, it's sitting down and being able to say to the person, how many hours have you been doing in the last couple of weeks? How are things at home? How are your concentration levels? How are your energy levels? And going into it and always seeking first to understand the other person's point of view. And that is not how health and safety typically faces the world. And that's why people in my profession have given us a really, really bad name. So the empathetic side of things, and I love people, and I find people's intricacies the thing that makes what I do so interesting, because you can actually get to know people when you're doing my job. I get to talk to the cleaners whose third language might be English, and to the MDs and CEOs of an organisation. So it has a real connectivity through the entire corporate structure of an organisation, which I love.
So you've seen, so I've seen like there was two main kind of motivators. Like there's the desire to help people to be safer and stay healthy, just because you feel that, and then there's the other side where it's like there's an industry where 95% of the people that are managing it aren't doing it as effectively as they could. So you kind of have like these both. I want to help the end result, and I want to change the industry. And,
yes.
And are those part of the reason why you went independent? Do you think you could do that more effectively as a consultant than as an employee?
Yes, definitely, because if people engage me as a consultant, I'm there because they want me there. Quite often as an employee doing health and safety in an organisation, you don't get to see the MDs and the CEOs. Your opinion isn't terribly valued. Whereas if an organisation gets to the extent of having to engage a health and safety consultant, provided you're saying the right things, you're pushing on an open door. Because why hire someone and pay them the kind of money that people pay me to then not listen to their advice?
Right.
So it does give me the ability of being able to influence rather than, and there's a big difference for me between influence and authority. As a health and safety, as a person who's employed by an organisation as a health and safety manager, I have a lot of authority that comes with that position. As a consultant, I very rarely have authority, but what I do have is influence. And that influence is very, very important in an organisation. And it has a greater, longer-lasting impact than authority does.
I want to ask you more about that a little bit later, because first I want to talk about some of the challenges you faced in getting to where you are now. Like, what were some of the challenges early on, and then we could talk about some of the other ones that came up.
Some of the early challenges were working out what kind of clients I actually wanted to work for, not just taking everything that was offered to me. And sometimes turning down work because I had something more interesting I wanted to do. Being a sole trader or running my own limited company, looking at a potential paycheck and saying, no, that's not the kind of work I want to be doing because it's not high risk enough or for whatever reason. That's a fairly tough thing to do, but I've never been motivated by the money. I've been motivated by helping the right kind of people, and I don't want to go into an organisation that doesn't actually want to be helped. I don't want to be used as a rubber stamp on a piece of paper saying we've engaged a consultant but ignored her. So that was definitely a challenge. Some of the other challenges were working with clients that didn't pay, so the organisational challenges, but that was also the first time I became strong enough to fire a client.
So I want to That's great. I want to look at the first one though, because that's an important piece. Like your willingness to say no to things that were safe, that were kind of okay, but not exactly what you wanted. It was challenging. Do you remember any particular situation where there was an opportunity that you said no to, but you're like, am I crazy to say no to this? And then what happens as a result of saying no to things?
Yes, there was. There was an opportunity for me to take on work with another property and construction company, and I had done that work for the previous 5.5 years, so I knew it would be a no-brainer. And it was because it was a no-brainer that I said no. I like doing things that scare the hell out of me, and there was absolutely nothing in that contract that would have scared me or challenged me or pushed me, and that's not what I wanted to do. If you're not growing, if you're not pushing yourself hard enough, you're not growing. and I am very much a growth person. I like to feel out of my depth, so
Cool.
I said no to that, and it was good money as well. But I looked at another opportunity which was less money, and this is an aviation client, and I took on a project with an aviation client for 6 months and actually made some real changes there. So that only presented itself after I had said no to the other opportunity. So
and there's some, I got the chills when you said that, actually, because I talk about this a lot. There's almost something magical in like by saying no to things. It's almost like the things we really want are waiting to show up in our life until we're willing to until they see we're willing to say no to the other things. Like you create that space and you say to the world, like, this is not what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing, so I'm ready. And that stuff just shows up. And one thing I've seen about you is that, like, you don't go out there chasing clients. Like, the clients that you want, like, you have this vision, you say no to the things you don't want, and it seems that the people that you do want, they find you. So how do you intuitively feel that you've been creating that? Because you're still creating it, it's just that you're not going out and, you know, what sense do you have about how that's happening for you?
That's a very good question. I know how I've actually been found by certain clients, and that's been through the fact that I have a YouTube channel and I'm happy to sit in front of a camera and talk engagingly about health and safety, and I'm happy to give away free information because health and safety is not a competition. It's about keeping people alive and looking after their well-being. And I've got a very good LinkedIn page, I've got a good LinkedIn business page, I've got a good social media presence, and people know, because they can watch my videos, they know what they're going to get. And they don't get anything different on my YouTube channel through watching one of my videos than they're going to get in person. So they're well aware that they're going to get a bright-eyed, bolshy Aussie turn up and say, what the hell are you doing? This is how we need to be doing things, let's talk. Right. So I think that word of mouth gets around about me, that I will add value, but I will hold people accountable. Yeah. So clients that pick me knowing well and truly what they're getting into. Right. So I think that definitely the social media side has helped me, but good word of mouth has helped me.
Yeah, I mean, lots of people will do social media, they'll do a LinkedIn page, but there's something that resonates more with yours. And if I have to go back in time just to kind of like, just to bring you back there too, like some of the things that I remember is like in the beginning, it was like, well, how do I present myself? What do I say? And there was like this is who I really am, but this is how I'm supposed to look as a health and safety consultant, right? And so how did your thinking change about how to do that, and how does that way of thinking, do you think, part of what's helping people to connect with you through social media and through LinkedIn and things like that?
I guess I just realised that professional image is a pile of rubbish, because people are engaging me for who I am. I see health and safety a different way. I talk about health and safety a different way. This public persona was bullshit, and I didn't want to hide behind it. So it was actually through conversations with you and you're basically saying, well, hang on a second, you talk about what people see as what they get, so give them what they're going to get. And there was a lot more integrity in that. And what I was aiming for was congruency. I want how I am with my friends, how I am with my workmates, how I am with the MD of a company or the cleaner, and how I am in my public persona through social media channels to all be congruent.
Yeah, and that's it. Yeah. This is what I see anyway. And what you put stuff out, you do videos, you do your LinkedIn profile, but you're not doing loads of it. I think there was a time where you're doing one post a month. I mean, it's not like you're this like, you know, internet marketer that's dumping out loads of crappy content. You're just being who you are, and you're sharing what you're inspired about. When you see a news story, you're like, this matters, and you end up on the news, on Sky News, and like when you have, you know, you made your videos about the things that are important to you, and then so when people are watching them, they're like, as you said, they're getting who you really are. And I think this is so attractive today, like somebody being real. I mean, you go out there and you talk about, you call yourself a health and safety consultant, but you also say the safety chick. You talk like you talk with your friends in your videos. You're a DJ, you know, and that's not something you hide. It's there. It's out, right?
Yeah, totally.
But when people check out what you do, they get who you are, and they want to get to know you, right? And so, what about, I'm curious too, because it's about doing what you love and it's about the purpose, but it's also about creating prosperity. And so what's been your journey from the beginning to where you are now? I mean, you used to work, what, 11 months a year, 10 months a year as an employee,
Yeah.
and now you're
Yep.
working. How much are you working now per year? And what's the you don't have to talk exact numbers, but how are things? What have you created as far as prosperity in your journey?
I'm mildly embarrassed to say that I work about 7 or 8 months a year now.
Why are you
And,
embarrassed?
um, oh, I guess it's the vast majority of my friends are still out there working 5 days a week, 40 hours, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week,
Yeah.
for the same kind of money they've been pulling in for God knows how long. And I left that and set up my own company, and I'm probably, well, I mean, I think I've just come back yesterday from my 5th holiday since April. And I was able to justify that by, I worked extremely hard over the last 12 months, but I did that by working around about 8 months of the year.
Yeah.
So I work hard and then I play hard. It's always been my motto in life. You're a long time dead, so enjoy life whilst you can. And that also includes enjoying life whilst I'm working. So unless there's a real absolute urgent need for me to work 5 days a week, and I've just been working in policing the last year, there have been occasions where I've needed to work 5 days a week. But then for the next month, I'll go back to working 2 or 3 days a week. So I do, the mistakes that I've made have been putting some of my clients before myself, and then my health suffered, and I'm the one talking to other people about well-being and stress. And then I went and got myself in that situation. I thought, you damned hypocrite. Yeah. So then I decided to take time off to look after my health and well-being for 3 months, including now. So I think it really is important to walk the talk, and it's very important for me to plan my holidays in advance, because then I can manage clients' expectations and say I can work during this period, but then what I need in order to serve you best is I am taking these 2 weeks off. Right. Then I will come back and help serve you for another 3 days a week for this period of time. Right. And that allows me to serve my clients more powerfully, because I'm in the best physical and mental state of health I can be.
Yeah, cool. Totally. And I want to circle back to the prosperity thing too, because one thing that stands out for me is that, like, your clients pay you much more than they typically would pay a health and safety employee or even a health and safety consultant. Yes. So what do you think it is that has these clients say, oh, well, this isn't really in our budget, or this isn't what health and safety people usually get, but we're going to pay you this because we really want to work with you? What do you think it is that has clients wanting to pay you so much money?
I don't think they're used to having a health and safety consultant sit in front of them, or a health and safety manager sit in front of them and say, this is how this will improve your bottom line if you get this right. Health and safety people tend to look down tunnels. They just look down the avenue of health and safety. I always take a step back and I look at the bigger picture. I consider the commercial aspects of the organisation, what financial state they're in, what they can afford to accept as a tolerable risk, what their senior management engagement is like. And quite often going in and engaging with senior managers and saying, look, I understand that your prime, the thing that you're scored on most highly is the profitability of this company. This is what it can do for your bottom line if you get health and safety right. And then engaging with them from a commercial point of view, getting them on board with, okay, it's just good business sense to manage this properly. And if I have to get them on board by taking them down the financial route initially, then I can get them down the route of, okay, we're doing this because it's morally the right thing to do. That's the way you can hook them and say, hey, this is going to make a huge positive impact on your business. Oh, and by the way, you're legally required to do it, but most importantly, it's just the right thing to do, so haul ass and do it.
So you kind of use profit and legalities to hook them in, and then once they're in there, you help kind of connect with their heart and help them to really connect with their purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the changing mindset.
Right.
And that's why I need contact with the upper echelons of each organisation.
Because you said you're not going to work with the HR department, right? You're going to work with. So what is that about?
A lot of organisations have health and safety report through HR, and the problem with that is health and safety and occupational health are very intertwined. HR have reasons for wanting people to be at work. Management have reasons for wanting people to be at work. Health and safety and occupational health people are focused on looking after the organisation and the individual, but there's very little communication between HR, occupational health, health and safety, and managers typically. So what you get is everyone looks at the problem with the individual or the situation with the individual with their own hat on. And one of the things I do is I get health and safety and HR to communicate much better with each other. It's difficult to do that if you sit a level below HR. So the companies I go into, I say to them, I need to report direct up to the MD or the CEO or the senior organisational management structure, not through HR, because HR often, in my experience, put the kibosh on things that health and safety are trying to get through.
Right.
And it's not right that that should happen. Health and safety should be operating independently of HR.
Yeah. What I love about how you've grown into this is like this is what you believe in, this is what you think is true, and you really don't have that much concern for how things are done already if it's not helping. It reminds me of this in this movie, The 100-Foot Journey. The guy was an Indian guy that was learning to cook French food, and he changed the recipe, and the woman said, "How could you change a recipe? It's 200 years old." He said, "Maybe 200 years is long enough." And it's like, not just saying because things have done this way, that's how it has to be done. You're coming into an entire industry and being like, this has got to change. This is going to be different. If I'm going to work for you, I'm going to report. You're going to report. I'm going to have direct contact with you, and people are stepping back and they're going, whoa, okay. You're really leading the creation of the relationships that you create with your clients. And I think this is a reason that you stand out. Like, you are a thought leader, and you are because you're not willing to go inside the mold. You're speaking for and doing what you know is true and what really matters to you.
Definitely.
So what's next for you, Sarah? Where are you headed? You're in this kind of 3-month kind of a break, kind of starting working on your book, but what's next?
Yeah, so I've started writing my book. I've actually got 3 books in the pipeline, and I've decided to go for the book that I want to write most first, which is about human behaviour and how the brain works and behavioural safety, getting managers to understand that when you put so many tasks on one of your staff members that they have certain responses, physiological responses in their brain, what happens afterwards is inevitable. But people don't understand how the brain works, so they don't understand that behavioural safety impact of things. And so it's partially about the brain, it's partially about how to make managers better managers, how to work better in meetings, getting people to understand that running a meeting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when everyone in the meeting has depleted blood glucose levels and they're not concentrating is just stupid. So if you're going to run a meeting at 3 o'clock, bring tea, coffee and biscuits, things like that. So basic things. The other things I'm looking at are working with universities such as Yale and Harvard and Princeton and other universities around the world, getting health and safety and more effective management through the process of understanding all of this into the curriculums for the leaders that are coming out in the future. And one of the best ways to change the world is by influencing its future leaders. So if we get this into these big curriculums of these courses that are going to breed the next big leaders in the world, even including the political side of things, that can make a massive impact on the world going forward. And so I want to be on my aim is to be on the international speaking circuit. I'm already looking at some engagements in the US for early next year. So I'm planning on splitting my time between the US, the UK and Europe and Asia Pacific, and going around the world speaking, training, working with leaders of large organisations and these universities to actually get this message and this mentality out there, because it really can improve businesses, save lives, and have happier, less stressed out people. And stress, for instance, is one of the as a huge topic that I absolutely love. Yeah, sure. And people just don't understand it. And understanding how the brain works and understanding how stress impacts people physically and mentally, and how that impacts on the bottom line of an organisation. Even if I look at the one facet of stress, that can make a massive financial implication.
And it's not just financial too. Like, taking it back to the other thing that really matters to you. Like, I know the making money part is big to get the hook, but for you, stress leads to other things, like in aviation and in
Exactly.
other work, more recent work you're doing with transport. How
Yeah.
is, could you talk about, like, I want people to not be stressed at work, and that's nice, but like, why does it really matter to you? What could stress result in say aviation or transport and the work you've been doing?
Train crash, plane crash, and stress, fatigue. Stressed people also tend to not sleep so well. So if you already have people who are working shift work, like pilots, like train drivers, truck drivers, and you put them in a position of being stressed and fatigued and putting them in charge of 150 or 350 people on an aircraft, or driving a train, or
Hmm.
driving a tube, the likelihood of them having an accident is much, much higher. So if we actually give management the tools they need to help manage stress and to help understand fatigue and how hydration and nutrition play an impact on fatigue and stress, that only goes to help organisations do things like bring in better fatigue risk management systems for pilots, to bring in better shift patterns for train drivers, to implement more stringent rules and greater support for truck drivers and things like that. So, I mean, and that's just focusing on transport. That's not even touching on policing or Ministry of Defence or any of the other military people I work with.
I know you can't talk much about that, but what can you say? Because a lot of the work that Sarah and I do is confidential. I cannot talk about it. She can't talk about it. So it doesn't matter that much because we're often mostly just talking about you. So
Yeah.
but what can you say about the work that you've been doing in the recent years?
So one of the things that I felt made a major impact, and the police force I was working with felt made a major impact. I started working with their covert officers, and it was supporting those covert officers. I mean, they're out every day dealing with would-be terrorists, and they can't go home and tell their wife what they're doing at work all day, or they can't tell their husband and children what they're doing. So it's a very isolating role. So I was working with them on how to provide better trauma support for them and how to examine what the risks they face actually are. And because covert and undercover, I think it freaks some people out because they're not allowed to talk about what they're doing. But then when they need to talk about what they're doing, they have no one to talk to. So putting support networks in place so that they can speak confidentially to people about the work they're doing and teaching other people. So I organised this course called a TRIM, which is Trauma Risk Management. And I organised that course for a certain number of the covert officers so that they could actually work with each other, and it enables them to recognise the signs and symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder or any stress or fatigue-related conditions, so they can actually support each other better. But they can also go external, to external counsellors. So that just for those covert officers was extremely valuable. And I had a really good conversation with one of them not long ago, who was talking about the impact that made. And he said, this has effectively been ignored for the entire time he had worked within that force, kind of 12 years. And he said, you're the first person that's actually given enough of a shit to put their neck out and say, I need to know more about what's going on with these guys so I can support them better. And that, for me, is one of the best things I've done in my career.
You're the first person who's ever given a shit enough to put their neck out. That, to me, that summarizes like how you've created all this success and how you're becoming a thought leader. Is you give a shit enough to put your neck out. You give a shit enough about other people and purpose to say, I'm willing to say this. I don't care if you get, but how many times have you told me stories about being in a meeting and just being totally straight, no bullshit with somebody, and they come up after and say, Sarah, I have to say this was, thank you and da 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 da. It's story after story of that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
If there's any message that I would love people to get, we'll just kind of wind up here from this hangout, is that like Sarah is a great example of just being self-expressive, being who she is. Sarah, you are you, right? There's no bullshit, and by being you, by being who you truly are, people pay attention, they're interested, they can trust you, and then you're also being unique because you're being you, and then you're more differentiated from the big norm of everybody else, and then the thing that's different is the thing that has more value. And you've proven that over and over again with the impact you're creating and clients showing up in your life. So very inspiring. Sure. Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your story.
All right.
Really awesome.
Thanks for time.
All right.
Great.
Much love.
Okay. Cheers. Bye.